I'm going to give you the number one reason to be excited about the future of the Cincinnati Reds right here on today's podcast.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Reds with myself, Jeff Carr, and my co-host Stephen Offenbaker, who is out today. He'll actually be back later on today, which, quick announcement before we get into all of the content for you here on this episode, is that right after the Reds and Cubs YouTube Game of the Week, we will be live right here on the Locked On Reds YouTube page. If you're listening on audio, make sure you join us on the Locked On Reds YouTube page. We will be live. We'll be taking questions and comments. We'll be recapping the game. Plus, I have a question for you about the term hot seat that you're not going to miss. But, by the way, you are Locked On Reds. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Thank you so much for making me your first listen. I'm free, and so Steve. Locked On Reds is free and available on all platforms. On today's episode, we are going to talk about the win last night in which Mike Minor pitched well. Aristides Aquino did what Aristides Aquino does to the Cubs, and the Reds got a win. But we have got to start off first by saying that today's episode is brought to you by Vroom. With Vroom, you can buy a car entirely online and have it delivered straight to you, so you never have to go to a dealership again. So next time you need to buy a car, just grab your phone, go to vroom.com, and check out thousands of great cars. Okay, really, what we're talking about first, the number one top of the list reason to be excited about the future of the Cincinnati Reds, say it with me, Elly De La Cruz. If you didn't know about Elly De La Cruz, well, you've probably been living under a rock a little bit, but he is phenomenal. Baseball America, as a overall player, rates him as a 60 on a scale of 20 to 80. It means they think he's going to be a very, very good major league player whenever he finally gets up. He's currently in Double-A Chattanooga, and he's setting Double-A on fire. The Southern League named him their player of the month for August. It is his first actual full month in the Southern League with the Lookouts, and he got player of the month. Just let that sink in for a minute. He was called up on July 22nd. So he spent, what's that, 9 days or whatever there in July. And then he jumps into August, where for the entire month, he had a .355 batting average, a .425 on base, and he slugged .688. He had 19 extra base hits in 24 games in the month of August. There's obviously a reason why everybody is excited about him, and I'm trying to let you know that if you don't know about Elly De La Cruz and the just fire that he is going to bring to Great American Ballpark when he gets called up, I believe late next year, because he's just on a complete tear in the minor leagues. We're going to get to a point where even AAA is not going to be able to contain the awesomeness that is Elly De La Cruz. He's got so much going for him. The scouting scale that we've used on the podcast, I just used it a moment ago, but we've used it before, is 20 to 80, right? If you're 20, why are you here? If you're an 80, why are you in the minor leagues? You should be in the major leagues. But when you look at Elly De La Cruz, and at least according to Baseball America and what they have for him, he has a 70 grade speed. 70. That means there's only a little bit more that he could have been to been a perfectly fast dude. He has a 70 grade arm. Dude can chuck it. And he's got 60 grade power. Dude can absolutely blast pitches that are left out over the plate. And we have seen it all season long in the minor leagues. Absolutely killing it throughout all levels. He is hitting .296 this year. That's insane, man. That's like 400 plate appearances, and he's hitting .296. Just absolutely phenomenal numbers. And the stats themselves, it's hard to look at a statistic and say, well, this is obviously going to translate to the major leagues. This is what he's going to do. But when you also see these scouting grades and you say these are the tools that he has, these are what you can expect from him on a daily basis, oh my gosh, absolutely so excited for the next big thing. He is the next big thing for the Cincinnati Reds, and he's the reason we talk about Steve and I continue to mention 2024 as the year that we really can start having expectations. I firmly believe that because he's going to be up in 2023. And when Elly De La Cruz is in this lineup and he goes with Jonathan India, Spencer Steer, Tyler Stevenson, you're going to have some other dudes coming up like Matt McClain. This team is going to be so good. Yes, this year has sucked. And the stretch run that we have here in September is more like a stretch limp. But the future is bright, and the future's not 5 years down the road. I've heard a lot of people saying, boy, we're getting back to the playoffs in 2033. No, it's going to be sooner than that. You can put that down. You can put the over, on that one. I guess it'd be the under. 2033. Yeah, anyway, whatever. 2024, 2025, those are the 2 years that I'm looking at. 2024 specifically, they're going to be a 500 team. Whether that gets them into the playoffs or not, different conversation for how the league itself looks. But the reason that we're so excited about this future starts with Elly De La Cruz, because he is going to be, I said this about Hunter Green and being in the Cy Young conversation multiple times, and I still believe that. Elly De La Cruz is going to be in the MVP conversation multiple times, many times in his career. And I can't wait for that because he does everything. He's not just a hitter. He's not just a fielder. He's not just a runner. He does it all. And this is a dude that came out of relative obscurity. He was not a high draft pick. He was an international signing that the Reds made. They didn't even give him a huge signing bonus. We always talk about, if you want to see how teams value a prospect when it comes to the international signing bonus, since there's not draft picks and you can't say, well, this guy was a first rounder. You kind of follow the money a little bit. Well, that doesn't even work for Elly De La Cruz because his signing bonus was not substantial. I think it was less than $100,000. So you're looking at a dude who has come from just about as low as you could be on the expectation totem pole, and he is now absolutely higher than you ever would have thought, because this is the number one reason. He is the next big thing. That is Elly De La Cruz. But in the present, we're happy about the future with Elly De La Cruz, but in the present, the Reds won a game last night. And it was thanks to two guys who have had some rough years. As the season winds down, it's good to see these types of performances, and we'll look at that next. But, like I mentioned, summer's winding down. The nights are getting longer, but the breeze isn't the only thing that's getting stiff. That's right, this episode's brought to you by Blue Chew. Guys, we all know that confidence can take you far in life. That's especially true in the bedroom, especially when it's time to step up to the plate. That's where Blue Chew comes in. Blue Chew is a unique online service that delivers the same active ingredients as Viagra and Cialis, but in chewable tablets and at a fraction of the cost. You can take them anytime, day or night, so you can plan ahead or be ready whenever the opportunity arises. The process is simple. Sign up at BlueChew.com, consult with our licensed medical providers, and once you're approved, you'll receive your prescription within days. With Blue Chew, men everywhere are excited to see the postman, because when your package has arrived, your package has arrived. So if you could benefit from some extra confidence when it's time to perform, chew it and do it. And we've got a special deal for our listeners. Try Blue Chew free when you use our promo code LOCKEDON at checkout. Just pay $5 in shipping. That's BlueChew.com, promo code LOCKEDON to receive your first month for free. Visit BlueChew.com for more details and important safety information, and we thank Blue Chew for sponsoring the podcast. Coming up tomorrow, coming up later today, really, we will have live reaction right here on YouTube, and we'll have the podcast form tomorrow if you're listening on audio for the recap of the Reds game. Plus, I have a key question for you, and I'm going to ask Steve this question as well about hot seats and what they have to do with the Cincinnati Reds. But first, let's get back to what happened last night. Minor and Aristides Aquino went off, and they powered the Reds to a win. Look, this is the time of year where guys like Minor and Aquino have to really dig deep, because if you look at the years that both of them have had, very uninspiring. Not the kind of years that you're like, okay, these guys might have something for us. But this is where a professional athlete's just otherworldly competitive nature comes into play, because guys like Aquino and Mike Minor have to prove something not only to us, but to themselves. Now, there's something about the Cubs that just brings out the best in Aristides Aquino. In fact, Mark Sheldon had a beautiful stat on his post-game recap, said that now 31% of Aristides Aquino's career home runs have come against the Cubs. 31%. There's 28 other teams out there that he's going to play, and probably one day he'll play against the Reds. But he's hit 31% of his career home runs against one of them, and that's the Chicago Cubs. They for everything that we Reds fans just are not sure what we did to offend Ian Happ, and Ian Happ just absolutely murders us. Aristides Aquino does that to the Cubs. Maybe he had a bad Chicago hot dog or something. Maybe they didn't give him the sesame seed bun. Maybe they gave him a wheat bun. They're just like, yeah, we're going to give this guy. He's not even going to know. And he's going to be like, Chicago dog, man. You got to give me that sesame seed bun. But he has absolutely murdered Cubs pitching. I even heard our friends over at Locked On Cubs the other day talk about, hey, Aristides Aquino went 0 for. Yeah, take that, Aquino. He back. Yeah, great night for him. Absolutely killed. His first home run went on to Waveland Avenue. I know that's like a thing for Cubs fans to be like, oh, it's all the way to Waveland Avenue. Aristides Aquino did that. Absolutely murdered that. He even had another hit, too. He had an RBI single in the middle of the game. The Reds poured it on the Cubs in this one. They just absolutely jumped all over Cubs pitching. They were working walks, getting timely hits, just building it up. But Aristides Aquino led the attack. But then on the other side of things, we've seen this too this year, where it's like, okay, Reds hitting's getting the job done. Reds pitching wasn't. Not last night. Actually, Mike Minor pitched well. He only gave up 1 run. And let's look at Mike Minor. Let's kind of look, zoom out. We'll zoom out a little bit on Mike Minor, because you remember that stretch where he was about to tie Homer Bailey for the most consecutive losses of the Reds, in his starts, because the Reds lost 10 consecutive Mike Minor starts, and he almost lost 11, which would have tied Homer Bailey. But then, since then, the Reds have actually won 3 of 4. He's turned it around. In fact, in his last 8 starts, he has a 4.7 ERA. Now, when I say turned it around, that means he went from to whatever. Because, when you go 4.7 ERA, that's a slight bit less than a quality start per outing. Because a quality start is 6 innings of 3 runs or less. If you go 6 innings and you give up 3 earned runs, that's a 4.5 ERA. 4.7, he's right there with him. And in his last 8 starts, what's the one thing we've said all year long that absolutely bites Mike Minor in the butt? Homers. He's only allowed 6 of them in his last 8 starts. In fact, and I didn't even talk about it yesterday, but I haven't touched the over with Mike Minor pitching, because he's actually kind of been a little bit better. But a little bit better for him is, definitely not horrible. It's just kind of whatever. And when you look at Aristides Aquino, the performances that he's put together, it's like, it's nice, This last week or so has been good for him. He's had a couple of multi-hit games. He's hitting some dingers. He's got that grand slam. Things are looking all right for him. Still batting $1.99 on the season. He's got a long road to hoe to look back on this season and see the numbers and be like, you know what? Okay, I can deal with that. Because if you end the season with a 1 at the start of your batting average, I can't imagine that feels very good. And he's trying his best to get in there. But if you look at Baseball Reference, he's played more games at right field than even Tyler Naquin has now. So they now officially list him as the main right fielder for the Reds this season, because they do it based on games played and all that other stuff. But what's more important and what's more interesting to me, because we noted the difference in the way that Baseball Reference and Fangraphs value Aristides Aquino. Aristides Aquino, according to Fangraphs, now has a 1.4 wins above replacement, which is officially more than he had in 2019. Yeah, this year has been better than 2019 for Aristides Aquino. Who figured? But according to that puts him in the top 10. That puts him as the 3rd best active Red in WAR right now. Because you had Luis Castillo, you had Tyler Mahle, you had Brandon Drury, you had Tyler Stevenson, who's on the IL. They're not playing right now. For the guys that are playing right now, he's in the top 5 of wins above replacement, according to Baseball Reference. Now, on Fangraphs, they have him less than 1 on the wins above replacement. I don't know what the difference is. That's math. It's above my head. But when you look at what he has done, it's very confusing because I want the fielding side of Aristides Aquino on this team. I don't want the bat. Unless they're playing the Cubs, which next year, the schedule, they stop playing divisional opponents as much, so they'll play the Cubs less, which means less opportunities for Aristides Aquino to go insane at the plate. So I still don't look at Aquino and say, yes, he should be an everyday outfielder for this team. Is he talking himself into a bench role? Is he working himself into? Am I talking myself into Aristides Aquino? I think I need to stop. All right, but you know what? When you look at Aquino and Mike Minor last night, you know, in the grand scheme of things, neither of these dudes are part of a successful Reds team in the future. But whatever. Last night was fun. It's good to see. Good to see performances from guys like that as they try to right the ship in a season that has not been very good for them. All right, coming up here in the final segment, I want to kind of tease my question for you on today's live show about hot seats and things like that. We're going to look at a couple of moves that the Reds made and a couple of questions that I have for you based on some questions I saw about a player that is now not playing for the Reds. That's coming up here in just a minute. But first, you should follow us on Twitter. After the show is over and during games and things like that, we have plenty of takes for you. Steve, you can find him at S. Offenbaker with 2 Fs. You can find me at Jeff Carr with 3 Fs, just as the graphic says right here on YouTube. Plus, you can find the show at Locked On Reds. We'll keep you up to date all the time on what's going on with the Reds on Twitter because we are Locked On Reds, your team every day. All right, so let's start off with this because today the Reds are playing on YouTube, and right after the game we're going to be live right here on YouTube on the Locked On Reds YouTube page. And I have a question for you, and I want you to think about this because I was reading in The Athletic the other day. It was an NL Central roundtable with the different beat writers for The Athletic for each team, and they asked them all the question: are your manager or general manager on the hot seat? That's an intriguing question because performance-wise, you would think so with the Reds. Going from just missing the playoffs last year to just missing being last this year, they still have a chance. They might be last. That's the kind of thing that you look at a manager and you say, all right, but let's break this down. Because it wasn't David Bell's fault. David Bell lost half his roster before the season even started. They got rid of everybody for him. What's a guy supposed to do? Plus, he just signed a 2-year contract extension at the end of last season. So we're not talking about a situation where I think David Bell's on the hot seat. In fact, I would be surprised if the chances of him being fired are greater than 10%. I think it's less than 10% that the Reds move on from David Bell. Also, when you're looking at the general manager spot, that's another thing. Okay, well, if it's not the manager's fault, it's got to be the general manager's fault because it got rid of all his players. Yeah, but he was kind of following orders, right? Like, it's easy to explain exactly what happened. Nick Krall got orders to cut payroll. And as much as we disagree with that, he's going to keep his job. I mean, if you get an order at your job, if somebody at your job tells you, need you to do this, you're just going to be like, well, you see, there's these guys out here at the window. They've been watching me. They don't want me to do that. They think that that's a bad idea. So I'm not going to do that. They're going to replace you. And they would replace Nick Krall if he said no. So what's he going to do? He's going to follow orders and he's going to cut payroll. So at the end of the day, this isn't Nick Krall's fault at all. Plus, nobody was praised more at the trade deadline than Nick Krall. Nobody. He absolutely killed the trade deadline. Now, we can debate whether or not his roster management on a day in and day out basis is desirable, but what he did at the trade deadline probably saved face publicly and behind closed doors as to his status with the team. So in a season where the Reds are terrible, where the Reds' win-loss record is awful and in the garbage can, and they're nowhere near the playoffs and probably just surviving to hopefully not lose 100 games, nobody's on the hot seat. Should it be that way? I ask you that. And I would love to know if you want to drop that in the comment section, or like I said, we're going live after the game today. You can definitely interact with us there. We will be talking a lot about that. We'll also be talking a lot about this because I got some questions yesterday, I think it was. Days are running together. But yesterday about Colin Moran, because Colin Moran was designated for assignment whenever Albert Almora was activated from the IL and brought up from his rehab assignment. And there were people that were like, we got rid of Colin Moran? The Reds need him. Do they, though? Have you seen Colin Moran's numbers? Not even just this year. We're not even going to go small sample size. I'm going to go the biggest sample size you can get. Look at his career numbers. Whenever the Reds acquired him this offseason, there were Pirates fans that were like, good luck. If the Pirates are saying that, what are we doing? He was a roster guy. He was a filler. He was a bench player on a bad team. What's that say? Why are we worried about guys like that? This is the point where worrying about veteran guys who you've heard their names, and I think this is where some fans get it twisted. If you've heard a guy's name before, that doesn't necessarily mean he needs to be on the roster over this prospect that you don't know anything about. Because the prospect that you don't know anything about is going to be the guy who grows into the guy anchoring a playoff roster for the Cincinnati Reds. Colin Moran has shown throughout his career that was not going to happen. Don't lose your head over Colin Moran losing his job. That's all I got. I don't understand anybody asking questions about Colin Moran. I don't. The only question I had about Colin Moran was, Colin Moran? Really? And not to be insulting to the guy, his career has been very unimpressive. And if we're getting that excited and we're getting that bent out of shape over a guy whose career has been very unimpressive, just you wait. There's a lot of moves coming this offseason because the Reds have to add a lot of guys to the 40-man roster to protect them from the Rule 5 draft and things like that, and guys who they're going to call up next year. There's going to be some hard decisions made. And I think we're going to say goodbye to some people that you know in favor of people that you don't. And you're probably going to be confused by it, but I'm going to be in the corner celebrating. Just how it is. All right, that's going to do it for us today. Like I said, Reds and Cubs are the YouTube game of the week. They're going to be live on YouTube coming up here in a little over an hour, depending on when you're listening or watching this. Join us on the Locked On Reds YouTube page live after the game. I cannot wait for this to happen. But that's going to do it for us here on this edition of the Locked On Reds podcast. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for listening. If this is your first time, make sure that you're subscribed wherever you're listening or watching. If you're on YouTube, make sure you also click that bell to get notified whenever we go live or whenever we have a new episode coming for you as it premieres. You will get a notification on your phone if you click that bell. Now, thanks for making us your first listen. Check out the Ultimate Pro Football Preview 2022. Locked On brings together all of their local experts for every single team, previews every division, gives you predictions, answers the tough questions, and also brings in Lee Sterling from Locked On Bets to give you a sports gambling angle as well. That's the Ultimate Pro Football Preview 2022. You can find it on the Odyssey app on YouTube. You can find it wherever you get your podcasts, right alongside Locked On Reds. Make sure that you join us today for the live show. Looking forward to interacting with everybody. The hot seat and the Reds. Should it be more of a thing?